Howdy, folks. This is Venning for Conscious Mosaic. I'd like to wish you all very happy holidays. I hope you all have wonderful, safe, enriching holidays with those that you love. Since we are in the midst of the winter holiday season, I have decided to make good on a promise I made quite a few videos ago to present an analysis of A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, one of my favorite authors. So I do understand that one of the ways you could interpret A Christmas Carol is, by saying that it's a story about a man who finds the true meaning of the holidays and decides that he wants to become a generous and kind-hearted person and change the world for the better. And that's definitely one way that you could see it. The way I tend to see A Christmas Carol is that it is the story of a businessman who is miserly, misanthropic, more on the conservative end of things, who discovers the need for public relations and becomes a pseudo-liberal businessman, but who ultimately does not change the system that he's living in. So before we look a little bit more at Scrooge's character and his development, I want to talk a little bit about the world that he lives in. One of the things that I find interesting about the world of A Christmas Carol, and kind of vexing too, is we're kind of supposed to ignore Maslow's hierarchy, right? This idea that there's a hierarchy of needs, right? That in order to find love and fulfillment, you need, for instance, to be able to socialize with people in a constructive way, and you need to have food and water and shelter and all your basic needs met, right? Because this story is peopled almost exclusively with the happy poor, right? The poor that, oh yeah, their needs aren't being met, but they aren't depressed as we would expect, or anxious or angry as we would expect, right? They're always just very, very happy. They always just take it no matter what comes to them. And I think it feeds into this it's kind of a let them eat cake type of a narrative where it's like, well, they don't have all their needs met, and yeah, the system needs to change systemically, and yeah, they're treated horribly all the time, but hey, I bought them a turkey on Christmas, so who cares, right? So I really feel like this idea as Scrooge as the protagonist of the story, right? Not the Cratchits, not his nephew, not anybody else, but Scrooge is the one that can bring happiness. And if he doesn't change the system, well, he makes them happy for a few moments, right? And this very much feeds into the narrative of philanthropy, because philanthropy is not about systemic change. Philanthropy is about making rich people look good. If philanthropy worked, it would eliminate poverty, because we have enough resources on our planet to eliminate poverty if they weren't sucked in by greedy rich people. So this whole narrative, this let them eat cake type of a narrative of, well, philanthropy kind of sort of works for a few moments every year, and that's all the poor people really need, because, hey, they're simple and happy anyway. I definitely think that's an important part of the Scrooge story. And I think this is an appropriate backdrop for the story of Scrooge as someone who discovers the need for public relations. Now, if we look at what I feel are the catalyzing points in the story, the events that change Scrooge, you could potentially argue that he's changed, for instance, by, knowing that Tiny Tim will die, or, knowing that there are people that are in need that don't have their needs met, that kind of thing. To me, that's so-so. Those things are kind of along for the ride. We see some of those things. But I think each story has a really important point in terms of Ebenezer Scrooge's reputation, because I think reputation is the catalyst that changes him. So when we go back in the past, we see near the end of the scenes with the Ghost of Christmas Past that he's been rejected by, I think it's Belle, by his girlfriend at the time, or fiance at the time. And she says, you have an idol that you've chosen over me. You've chosen gold over me. I don't have enough money to be in your life and make you happy. You wouldn't pursue me given the change that's come over you. You're a changed person, and you wouldn't pursue me now like you pursued me back when you didn't care so much about money, right? So that is a strong condemnation of Scrooge's reputation, right? And he looks back and he sees, this woman didn't like me anymore because of my money and because of my attitude toward it, right? We move to the second spirit, right? The Ghost of Christmas Present. And we see him looking on in the Cratchits. But remember, one of the most important scenes here, one of the most important exchanges, is what the Cratchits say about him. Now, Bob is willing to consider him a benefactor, even though he's grossly underpaid. and the wife gives in, but not before Scrooge sees that she doesn't want to toast him. She doesn't think he's a good person, right? She's only doing it for the sake of her husband and her husband's goodwill and generosity, which kind of, again, feeds into this narrative of the happy poor and the poor that look up to the rich and, oh, they're so benevolent, they're so great. If only they would give me a few more crumbs, I would be satisfied. That kind of narrative. We move to the future and we have a strong condemnation of Scrooge's narrative through the three thieves. And notice these thieves, they're behaving just like he is. They're taking whatever they can get from whomever they can get, and they don't really have a motivation beyond making money, right? So they are very much like Scrooge, or like the Scrooge at the beginning of the story in that way. Perhaps he sees in them that condemnation of his reputation, right? And then he sees, and this is kind of an ultimate blow to his ego. The one they're all talking about, the one they can't stand, the one who has died alone, is him, right? That's what Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come is ultimately showing him, right? Showing him that bed, showing him that gravestone. So this is, again, it's about his ego in terms of his mortality and his ego in terms of reputation, and not wanting to die alone, not wanting to die with so many people hating him. And I think that ultimately, in that with the third spirit, is when we see him, or I guess it's technically the fourth spirit because of Jacob Marley visiting him as well. We see that sense of, that dying alone with that really poor reputation, nobody loves him. And I think that's when he starts to realize, oh, I need people to like me. Just having money isn't enough. It's okay. It's worthwhile to spend a little bit of this vast fortune that I've amassed in order to make sure that people like me. So he realizes, oh, it's not just about physical capital. It's also about social and cultural capital. And I think if we look at Scrooge's behavior on the morning that he wakes up and he realizes it's Christmas morning, the spirits have done it all in one night because they can do whatever they want, blah, blah, blah. If we look at some of the interactions he has after his change, right, his supposed change, they really tell us that the change is not all the way through, that it's a surface change. The first interaction he has is with the boy that brings him the turkey. Notice he doesn't say to himself, "This boy needs money, I'll give him money." Right? It's all about bringing him something that will enhance his reputation with the Cratchits, right? Because they are eventually going to know who brought the turkey, who sent the turkey. How could they not? And he even tells him, if you serve me well, if you do a quick job of it, I'll even pay you more money, right? So it reinforces this hierarchy that is not a charitable hierarchy, but is the idea that if you serve me well, that's when you're paid well. Now, you'll never be paid as much as I am, but you'll be paid better if you serve me well, right? We have an interaction with the guy who's collecting for charity. And it's interesting because Scrooge whispers the amount he's going to give in his ear. Yeah, he doesn't say it out loud in the public street. He doesn't shout it, right? That might not look good for his reputation, but he makes sure it's known. He plays this kind of shell game with knowledge, right? He makes sure the guy knows that he's going to be very generous and he knows where the money's coming from. He does not give it anonymously, notice. But he's kind of underhanded. He's a little sneaky about letting him know about it, right? Even though I'm sure he imagines, this is going to change my reputation, right? We have the next day when Cratchit comes into the office. Scrooge has been so mean to him for so many years. I mean, you could even say to the point of psychological torture. And instead of him just saying right out, I'm different now, I'm going to help you and your family, he plays that little game with Cratchit where he's like, oh, I'm going to make him think that I'm really mad at him and I'm the person I used to be. And right. And it shows that his feelings, that he's not actually thinking of others. He's thinking about himself and the little game he can play on Cratchit, right? He wants to be entertaining, right? And that becomes part of his new persona, this persona that can gather reputation, this persona that doesn't just have physical capital, but now knows how to gain social and cultural capital. In a lot of ways, Scrooge reminds me of like a Jeff Bezos or a Bill Gates or an Elon Musk or someone like that, because these are people that they're so filthy rich that they have stolen most of the resources from the rest of us. But they also understand the need for reputation, so they give token amounts to charities. Now, you might say they give millions and millions of dollars. Sure. I think every time a rich person gives to a charity, we ought to know the percentage of their income they gave, right? Was it 0.1%, or 0.00001%? Was it 0.5%? Was it 1%? Has any rich person ever given 50% of their of their worth, right? Even though they were still so filthy rich that all their needs would be met? No, I doubt that's ever happened, right? Because again, philanthropy is about reputation. It's about making rich people look good. It's not about changing the system and making people equal and redistributing the economy. Yeah. And I think that's definitely what we see with the Scrooge story. And that's what makes this such a fascinating story to me, because it's a story that, it's, I believe 1843 was when it was published, 1840s anyway. And it's a story of modern business in the sense that it's a story of someone discovering that reputation is essential to modern business, right? It's not just about collecting money, it's also about collecting reputation points. And so I find that really fascinating in a story that most people see as one of the most benevolent stories possible on a holiday that's all about, spending, going out and giving all this money to these stores and buying stuff. Many people buying things that they don't really need, to inflate the economies of stores that certainly don't need any extra money. But that's kind of what Christmas is all about. It's kind of about fooling ourselves, and about reputation, about being rich, about giving to enhance reputation, even if you don't have the money, or even if you can easily afford to change someone's life, only giving them a token, let them eat cake sort of a present. So to me, this is really, really fascinating, kind of sinister as well. But I think this makes this book one of the most important books for the modern world, because it really tells us about how we're being fooled every day by rich people. So thank you very much for listening. Everyone have a fantastic, whatever holidays you celebrate. I hope that they're fantastic for you, that you are in the midst of love and people that care about you, and family and friends and all that kind of thing. So thank you so much for listening. Please, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and/or subscribe, to help build this channel, because I love bringing you in-depth, intelligent analysis of arts just like this video.